Hey, Mr. McMillan, how are you, sir? Can you hear me?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good, sir. Good to
Yes, I
see you.
can.
All right, good deal. We can hear you and
I
see
can
you.
type in my state of North Carolina.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, just your license number, the state phone number, and your name. That way, Laura can get you uploaded tomorrow for the credits. And can every
I'm 67.
well,
Trying to
welcome.
figure out how to do that.
It looks like you're doing a pretty good job. We can see you and hear you good. You doing it on your phone or a computer?
I'm on my phone,
Okay. Yeah, perfect.
Android.
Good deal. And setting in your recliner, just taking it easy, getting some pesticide credits.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yes, sir.
All right. So if everybody can see me and hear me and see the slide deck entitled Natural Pest Controls, can everybody just give me a thumbs up if you can see the slideshow? Cool. Awesome. Awesome. We'll go ahead and get this thing rocking and rolling. Slide this over here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize the chat box here. All right, so 7:07. We'll go ahead and get started. I don't think there is anybody else. Nope, waiting to get in, so good deal. We will rock and roll. All right, so natural pest controls in the landscape. It happens. It really does. It happens probably more often than we think, but it's probably not a tactic that we are going to use in the lawn care or our maintenance beds, like our shrub beds, tree rings, stuff like that. We're probably not even thinking about that. But what do you think some natural pest controls that are happening every day? What do you think happens with some of our insects? And this probably pertains more to the insects than it does the weeds and everything else. But what do you think would be some good natural pest controls just right off the top? What do y'all think might be happening in Mother Nature? Because she can control a lot of our situations if we didn't have so many picky customers. They're the ones that require us to do more than probably is needed. But can anybody off the top of their head think of some natural pest controls that we may see every day?
The pest.
Do what?
Other pests.
Other pests, yeah. They kill each other. Yeah, they're predators. They are predators. And what's Mother Nature's number one pest control? What is her favorite predator that she uses that actually is a very good beneficial to us? And a lot of people. Weather's one, yeah. Weather's one. But a lot of people don't like this one thing that I'm talking about.
Roundup.
Well, Roundups wouldn't be considered. It's considered a part of integrated pest management, but it's not a natural. And when I say like a natural pest control, we're talking about like weather, predators, climate, food source. But what do you think Mother Nature's favorite pest control is? We run into them. We run into them when we mow underneath a tree or whatever, and we get them all over our face, and we're like
Spiders.
spiders. Exactly. That is Mother Nature's number one pest control, natural pest control. They do more for us than we can even think about. But most people, when they see them, they get a little spooked and they want to kill them. We should just leave them alone. Just leave them alone. And where do you see a lot of these spiders? Where are they hanging out? It's getting a little bit dark right now. If we turn our porch light on, what do you think's going to be happening if we go outside?
Yeah, they're spreading their webs already.
Yes, exactly.
They'll be in the bushes and trees.
Yep. All right, let's see. Robert says you keep losing the screen. Do I need to click something? I'm not sure. Just let me know, Robert, if you can see us or whatever, or if you can hear us. But yeah, when we go outside, if we take a break or whatever, and you step outside or whatever, especially if you look up at one of your exterior lights on the house, you're going to see like a spider web over it, or anywhere there's like a porch light. They love that. Why do they like building their
The heat.
the heat?
It attracts bugs also. And that's where they get their food.
Yep, exactly. You can just stand there for just a minute or two, in that web in front of that light and watch these little creatures just fly right into it. And it's amazing to watch that spider go to town. I mean, it is, like I said, Mother Nature, she is super, super smart. All right. And so our objectives for the first part of this course, we will identify what are natural pest controls. We will identify what are pests, and then we'll identify how these natural pest controls work. And then we'll identify ways that we can use natural pest controls. So we are going to identify the natural pest controls. We've talked about one. One of them is animals or predators. And we're going to talk about weather and climate. We're going to talk about food, their food sources. We're going to talk about beneficial insects, all of that. But then we're going to identify what are pests. Now, pests are pretty much anything that is an undesirable in a situation. But can anyone tell me right off the top of their head a particular biological that may be a pest in one situation, but is a welcomed guest in another situation? And I'm thinking more along the side of lawn care in the turf grass industry.
Grub worms.
Maybe, yeah. I guess we'd fish with them, couldn't we? We might use them for fishing.
I think so.
I wonder what one of those little nasty boogers tastes like, man. You dig them out of the ground. They look like shrimp. They look like the little shrimps that you get at the Japanese restaurants that they cook in front of you. But yeah, possibly. But what about a plant that we see every day, that we see in the landscape, we see in the turf grass? In one circumstance, it is welcomed. People pay big bucks for it. But then in another situation, it's considered a pest, a weed that people are trying to get rid of and eradicate.
You're talking about like in sod grass?
Yes, yeah, in grass. So what are we getting? What sports season's getting ready to start? Well, maybe start. I don't know.
NFL.
The NFL, college football. What type of grass do they usually play on?
The turf. We call it turf grass. What is that? Like
most of them down here, they're probably playing on a Bermuda grass.
Yeah, Bermuda.
Yeah, and so Bermuda grass in athletics, including golf courses, baseball fields, football fields, is considered a very attractive, high, maintenance grass. But what if you go to your customer's house that has tall fescue? That Bermuda grass is a pest. We don't want it there.
Yeah.
We don't want it there. And the way we conduct our business, we may be contributing to that Bermuda grass becoming a pest in someone else's lawn. Because even right here where we're at in the transition zone, we're here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, we have customers that have tall fescue, and then we have neighbors down the street that we also take care of their properties that have warm season grasses. We have that mix here. On the eastern coast, you guys are probably dealing with the warm season grasses. In the mountains, dealing with, the cooler season grasses. But here in, the Piedmont Plateau, we have the transition zone, and we have clients that have, two totally different grass types on the same street. If we don't blow the mowers off in between cuts from yard to yard, we could be spreading that Bermuda grass into our tall fescue lawns. And that makes for a highly upset customer. They do not like that. Let's see. So in this lesson, we look at the balance of nature and some of the fundamental ways in which living organisms control their own population and the populations of other living organisms. Now, that's kind of almost seems like a crude statement, because in the insect world and the mammal world or whatever, everything but us, it's all about the next generation continuing life. You know, a lot of insects, you know, they give birth, they die, or the male insect or critter, you know, fertilizes the female and then they die. It's all about continuing their populations and controlling the populations of other living organisms. I would actually hate to be born an insect. These guys have to struggle every single day. We're going to kind of skip this. Talk about that at the school. But obviously, when we look at all the living organisms, we are including the subset of organisms that we regard as pests. And so what is natural pest control? What do you think would be a good definition by just the talk that we've had so far? Natural pest control. Mother Nature's doing it. So what would be a good way to term this? If somebody were one of your clients come up to you and say, hey, we've been researching and, you know, do you think we could do some natural pest control in my yard because I don't want my little kids playing out there, you know, walking on the turf grass, you know? Well, I hate to tell them, we're not going to get rid of weeds unless we, you know, use a pesticide. But if somebody comes up to you and says, what is natural pest control? What's one way we can define it?
What is a natural pest control?
Like a broad definition. Broad definition. They come up to you and say, Mr. Fowler, we saw something about natural pest control. What is that? What is that? How can we use that in our landscape?
Oh gosh. I don't want to say grub worm no more. Oh.
But there is a cultural way to get rid of, you know, grub worms. I don't think we won't do it. We probably don't have enough time, and our customers may not have enough money. But natural pest control, that is pest control that occurs in nature without any prompting from us. It just happens. It just happens. Just like with aphids.
I thought you were thinking one other thing, but you know, that's head on right there. You're right.
But we're not interfering with Mother Nature and the natural pest controls that's taking place. Mow taller. Yep, we can mow taller. Mowing taller. Speaking of that, Robert's talking about that. If we have our tall fescue lawns, and he's mentioning mow the grass taller, what does that do for that Bermuda grass?
It kills it.
Chokes it out.
Chokes it out.
Chokes it out. I see here where I live, I see a lot of people retiring early, you know, from Reynolds, tobacco, and stuff like that years ago. And I remember they'd retire at like 55. And the first thing they do, they get that new John Deere belly mower, and they're scalping their lawns. Like they have a beautiful fescue lawn, and then they lower it and they want it cut down to 2 inch, and then that's not good enough. Then they cut it lower. Next thing you know, Bermuda's taken over the entire lawn because they don't want to spend the money to plug and seed and kill it, and they scalp it. That's just what happens. But yes, mowing taller grass, mowing it at 4 inches, that is a great step in an integrated pest management program. But can we sell that to our clients? Telling them, hey, we need to mow it at 4 inches. Not a lot of them, they don't like that. And we may have to mow it twice a week. But if they are the customer that is like so anti-pesticides, they may go for it. they may go for mowing it twice a week if they know that they can cut down on pesticide use. 4-inch mowing height, yep, you can reduce the pre-emerge, of course, yep. It shades all those seeds out. You got to have that sunlight. So great.
Customer, she likes it at 3 inches.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to cut it twice a week.
Yep. And that's I'm okay with that. I mean, as long as they pay, we'll cut it 4 times a week for them. That's just the way it goes. Money talks, right?
You're right.
The bad thing about that is different on the routes. If you're kind of spread over a geographic area, it's kind of hard to get back and do those. But that's why you almost need like a special crew that actually can go and handle stuff like that. Let's see. All right, so we humans, we have disturbed this great system, and we need to learn how to reestablish its effects. And we do. We mess everything up. We do. Humans just we've destroyed email. We get millions of emails a day. It won't be long before we mess up the internet and all that stuff. But we've definitely destroyed these natural balances in our environment. So understanding the natural principles, it can help you tremendously in managing pest problems. But first of all, what is the number one reason for pesticide failure? If we make an application to one of our customers' lawns or their landscape beds or their tree and shrub care, whichever part of the industry you're in, what is the number one reason for a pesticide failure?
Not knowing the product that you're putting out.
True. That is correct, but there's one more thing before that step. You got to know your products. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But there's one step before that that helps you choose the product. As we go to a customer's yard, we're looking, we're inspecting, we're monitoring, we're seeing what's going on. Identification. Robert typed it in there. Yes, misidentification of the pest is the number one reason we have a pesticide failure. We incorrectly identified the insect or the weed, and we went and got the wrong pesticide that we needed. We got to correctly make sure that we know what pest we're trying to get rid of first. And once we identify that pest, what do we need to know about the pest in order to pick which product to use? We've got to know the life cycle. We got to know what stage of life those insects and those bugs are in, because it's going to be a different product, different life cycles. Furthermore, these concepts are critical to the development of a successful integrated pest management program. And we'll talk more about that in the second hour. But IPM, first developed for agriculture, it's a good way. It is a good thing to talk to your clients about. They want to hear you not having to use a pesticide. They want to hear an expert in the industry talk about this stuff. And guys, you can Google it. NC State has, IPM programs up about fescue lawns. I mean, this is something that we could definitely talk to our customers about. And it's a good way to actually make some good money, because people want to hear this. People want to implement this in their program, especially if they're, a little bit on the anti-pesticide side, because we fight that all the time. The lawn care industry is always going to get criticized. Hey, we use too much nitrogen. We use too much iron. We're using way too many pesticides. We're destroying the environment. But what they don't understand, that we are stewards of the land. We are the ones that take care of our customers' property. And a successful lawn care program with a good stand of grass that is weed-free, a 1/4 acre yard can remove more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere than that family can put into it. Because grass has so much surface area. That blade of grass, a thick, healthy stand of turf grass, has so much, surface area that it can remove that carbon dioxide. More so than weeds. But crabgrass, Digitaria species, can produce 2,000 seeds per square foot in a single season. Man, that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. And what do you think happens to all of those 2,000 seeds that gets produced?
They fall right down.
Fall
There
right
they are.
down.
They just remultiply.
Yes. And what do we do with those seeds when we get on the turf grass?
Then we spread them out.
We spread them. It gets in our shoes. It gets on our mowers. It gets on our equipment, even the weed eaters. And we go from yard to yard to yard, and we're spreading that all over the place. All over the place. But think about it. Crabgrass is a big money maker for us. It really is. The pre-emergence that we put out, that gets the lawn care season started. You know, early February, whatever, when you're making that first application. It's kind of one of those things, we don't really want to eradicate it, do we? I mean, it's one of those battles that we're going to continuously fight, but it is a big moneymaker for the lawn care industry. Good old picture of it. Nasty stuff. There's a lot of it out there right now. Think about this. When it comes to Mother Nature and her being, you know, the top killer of these insects, look at this statement. The common housefly can lay 600 eggs, which mature in about 6 days in hot weather. Two flies. They're going to have 600 babies. What do you think is going to happen 12 days after these first two flies get married and have babies? Them 600 are going to have 600 eggs. What do you think is going to happen on day 18? All them babies are going to have 600. What's going to happen on day 24 in less than a month? Just, if y'all got your phone handy, type in that number. Like, just do like 600 times 600 times 600. It don't take but like 3 times, and it's off the screen. It's already to the exponential number. But that many flies. Wouldn't you hate to walk outside in that?
Good grief.
Crazy. Well, look at this number. Given that reproductive rate, a pair of original flies could eventually lead to a layer of flies thousands of feet thick around the entire planet in just one summer. So in 90 days, 3 months, 2 original flies. But why has that not happened?
Control. Insect control.
Natural pest controls. Mother Nature. Mother Nature's determined that. And, you know, the natural pest control ain't mama's fly swatter. We talking about birds. We're talking about frogs. We're talking about spiders. We're talking about anything and everything that'll kill these little guys. And the weather. Flies don't like cold weather, and they also don't like rain. What happens when it rains? Y'all remember seeing the Tom Hanks movie when he was the bee character, played the little bee? And it would start raining, and they were having to find shelter like immediately.
Oh, yeah.
They did not like the rain. It would hit them and knock them. I mean, it was knock them out of the air, kill them. So why it's not happening? Again, natural pest controls. So what are some natural controls that we're seeing? The most important natural controls are climate and weather, food and habitat. They got nowhere to live and nothing to eat, they're gonna pack up and move. Pathogens, they get sick. Predators, they get eaten. And then parasites and parasitoids. Parasitoids, those are some bad little dudes, microscopic little wasp-looking dudes. Their botanical names are too long. They don't have common names. They're the unsung heroes of biological control. And their favorite food is aphids. What's the coolest thing about an aphid? You know, we talked about, you know, one of those first slides we're talking about, you know, these little critters, all they're worried about is producing life for the next generation. You know, they sacrifice themselves to keep, you know, the colony or the hive, whatever they call their little family group going. What's the coolest thing about an aphid? What does the female aphid not need to have babies?
Partner.
She don't need a partner. She can impregnate herself.
Yeah. And
you talking about making sure that the next generation gets born, it's being taken care of. We're going to look at each one of these in detail. So climate and weather, the difference in these two. Climate is the long-term overview of temperature and humidity changes in a region. And I think probably here in North Carolina, you know, we have a pretty good climate. We have a nice winter. You know, we get to see some snow every now and then. We get the rain that we need. We definitely get the beach weather that we all like doing. Gets a little hot sometimes in the summer. And we got certain insects that love the heat. It's like those flies. They didn't have the natural predators. And we had a very hot summer. That would happen.
we got big mosquitoes around here.
Yes. And you know what? I never used to get bit by mosquitoes. Never. But this has been the worst actual year for me having mosquito bites. And Laura, my wife, she gets eat up. Like she can't even walk from the house to the car without 20 bites.
Mine too.
And it's, I don't know, you know.
That's because they got that sweet meat.
I guess. But I asked my doctor that, you know, one time. I'm like, why do I not get by mosquitoes? Because I had to finally buy a watch that I charge every night because my watch batteries would go dead. He's like, man, you got too much iron in your blood. He said, that's why mosquitoes won't eat you up. But now I'm on a blood thinner and I'm taking that as a daily regiment. So my blood's thin. I'm wondering if that iron has depleted a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Crane fly, large numbers this past spring, unusual. Yep, we did see a lot of crane flies. You're exactly right. And you know what, Robert, are you seeing much right now, or did they've kind of chilled out a little bit? We don't see them as much now, do we? So exactly. Wonder what natural pest control has slowed that down. We saw them in the spring. Was it the spring weather that they liked? Was it the heat that got them? Was it other predators? But you're exactly right. There were a ton of them back in the spring, and now that is slowed down. But mosquitoes are still just, boom, popping. I went home for a little bit, rode bikes with Laura, and got covered up in mosquitoes. And you could just see them swarming around us. But what is Mother Nature's number one pest control for a mosquito?
The climate.
Climate works. But all right, and you're right, that is, because the climate will get them. Let's think about something that's going to eat them. Bats. Yeah. Right, if y'all are looking at the chat box, yeah. He's typing in there. Bats love them. They eat them up. But guess what? When people see a bat flying around this time of night, what do they want to do? They want to call the structural pest control guys or wildlife removal specialists and come take those bats out of the attic. You know, leave them. Those guys are there's no telling how many thousand that they eat in a summer. And if we go around and get rid of the standing water that we have, another way to implement integrated pest management. People are paying big bucks for these mosquito magicians and stuff like that to come around. There's a lot of things that we can do to prevent that in our yards. For one, is standing water. And the landscapers always get blamed for standing water anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tomato hornworm. Does anybody in here grow tomatoes? Anybody have a good garden this year or do greenhouse? Well, maybe not greenhouse tomatoes, but have a nice garden?
Outside, yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen many tomato hornworms?
No. Mm-mm.
What do you think that might be?
Might be the insecticide that I'm putting on the plants.
Could be.
7 does good.
But what when these guys are eggs in the ground, they do not like a particularly wet winter. Did we have significant rain this past winter?
Yeah.
It was. So a lot of them got killed. None of them hatched. None of them came out. If we were to have an extremely dry winter with cooler temperatures, we're going to see more of these in the springtime. And what's funny, we actually went to the pet store, and they were selling these guys for like $15 for 3. Somebody was growing them out because this is like the perfect food for the little lizards that are in the fish tanks and everything. People are growing these and selling them for $5 a piece. And I'm like, well, if we'd have had a drier winter and you grew tomatoes, you'd have had all of them that you wanted. But whoever knew that you could sell these little guys for $5 a pop. Food and habitat. No food, no organisms. Pest, they got to have something to eat. The simplest, non-toxic method of control can limit the pest's access to food. Now, we're going to talk about cockroaches a couple times during this lecture. I don't care the income level of people. You could have $1 million house, or you could have, a $50,000 house. Guess what's in both of these houses? Cockroaches. These guys are going to find a way to get inside. Now, what do people do with dog food a lot of the times to prevent like a cockroach from getting in the dog food bowl? Create like a little moat. They'll set the dog food bowl with dog food in like a bigger bowl with water, because that cockroach isn't going to jump over and swim to get to the food. And you want to actually protect, because that's actually like a welcoming source for the cockroaches. But the problem with the cockroach is they don't like the daylight. They don't like being out in the general vicinity of where we're going to be. They don't like us, just like we don't like them. The problem is when we see one run across the kitchen floor, what's that telling us?
We got a problem.
We got a problem, because that means there's too many underneath the kitchen sink or in the walls. Now, don't let your wives hear that, because you might be pulling out all the stuff underneath the kitchen sink and making sure y'all ain't got cockroaches. They like hanging around the pipes where it sweats, so they have access to the moisture. They have something to drink. It's nice and cool underneath there. But these guys, they don't like hanging out with too many of each other. And so what's happened, they've pushed that one out of their little colony or their little area, and he's going somewhere else to look for food and shelter. So when you start seeing them run across the floor, you've actually got more in the house than you want. All right. Habitat is just as important as food. Example is the ash aphid on the Modesto ash trees. Now, this happens because people like topping these ash trees. And these ash aphids, they like hanging out on the new growth. So what happens when we top these trees?
You don't have no habitat.
Well, as soon as you prune it, what happens? Like with the crepe myrtles, everybody crepe myrtles around here. What happens when we top a crepe myrtle? What happens?
Well, then it comes back blooming. Yeah.
Yeah, you get this flush of growth, and you get this new soft herbaceous material, which the aphids love that. They love that soft new growth. So whenever we top a tree, we're creating more of a habitat for these guys. And a lot of these trees, even these ash trees, they're going to put on sucker growth at the bottom. They're going to have the water sprouts. You've got to keep that pruned out. Removing their habitat, they're not going to be there. They're only going to be on that burst of new growth. And there you can see it, kind of curling up the leaves. And they drop a honeydew on the property, on the sidewalks, in the grass or whatever. And that can actually be, kind of an emergency situation if somebody was to walk through it, slip, and get hurt. Or if they park a car underneath it, that honeydew could actually ruin a paint job. And so the aphids, they have 2 population peaks each season. Corresponds when nitrogen levels are the highest in the foliage. That's at spring leaf unfold and fall leaf drop. Well, what are we doing right there in the fall and the spring in the lawn care industry? We're putting out nitrogen. We're putting out a pre-emergent that's got nitrogen in it. We're putting out some 18, 24, 12 in the fall when we do our plugging and seeding. And that's putting more nitrogen in the soil. Well, these trees are actually absorbing that nitrogen as well. So that's creating more of a food source for them because the aphids have to have the nitrogen to live. It's a food source. So don't create more of a problem with nitrogen application. Definitely don't be giving it to the trees, but it's going to be one of those situations you may have to skip. If you have an aphid problem already on some of your trees and shrubs, the last thing you'd want to do is to actually make a nitrogen application in the turf grass unless you had a major tree ring or shrub bed enclosing all this. But if you have a tree out in the middle of the grass and you're plugging and seeding, it's going to get some nitrogen, just enough to give these guys something to eat. Pathogens. One can properly think of most human lives as caught in a precarious equilibrium between the microparasitism of disease organisms and the macroparasitism of large body predators, chief among which have been other human beings. I threw this in there. This is from Plagues and People. It's a quote from William McNeill, and it kind of goes along with what we're experiencing right now, with the COVID situation. It's kind of, set society back a little bit. And unfortunately, I think it's going to kind of be the norm for the next few years. People don't want to get too close to people. And I hate that. I hate not being able to go to a concert or to go where there's a large group of people. I love being around people. I just love it. I'm an extrovert, so this has kind of hurt a lot of the extroverts, but people that, are homebodies, they like just loving, having to stay home and not having to do as much. But, the same thing with schools. This is a tough situation for young students. I mean, my daughters yesterday, I helped them all day pretty much with their homework and stuff. It's a lot harder for them learning online than it is going to school. Plus, they don't have that social interaction. It's tough. But pathogens, when we have a pathogen, we're usually going to see it when there's an overpopulation of the creature. When there's resource depletion, they don't have enough to eat themselves, which again then causes malnutrition. And then they start competing for the habitats. It's almost like, the strongest will survive. They kick to the curb the weaklings. And when it comes to humans, this has always led to disease and war. And like I said, when this COVID thing first came out, what did humans start doing right off the bat? When we first heard this is going to be like the worst thing in, our generation that we've probably seen, what do people start going to the stores and buying?
Toilet paper.
Yes, they were buying like 10 packs and stuff. And then you've got the elderly people, that had to go and get toilet paper and there was none left on the shelf. I mean, people started hoarding stuff and they didn't care about their neighbors and what they had. So, thank goodness. I know COVID has been horrible. I mean, it has, and, we've lost lives to it, but, I'm just thankful that it's not been something like, the
Black Plague.
Black Plague. Yes. That killed, would have taken out half our population. But plants and animals have been doing this long before humans were around. And you know what, guys? Guess what's going to be around after there is no more of us on this earth?
Plants and animals.
They still going to exist. Yes, sir.
Cockroaches.
Yes. And guess what? The cockroach was introduced to the United States. It is not a native. Anybody else know some other invasive creatures that were brought out, especially in the lawn care?
I don't know about the long.
Dandelions.
Yeah.
Dandelions were introduced to the United States. What's the number one reason we have dandelion problems? Has something to do with little kids. And go and pick them, and they go and blow them seeds all over the place. And look at that. You know, that weed has take hold, and it's always going to be around, and it is going to continue the next generation, the new life cycle.
Yeah.
Predators. Critical in the suppression of natural populations of animals and plants. We've even got some plants that eat insects.
Yeah. Venus flytrap.
Yes, one of the coolest things to watch. And you can actually just kind of, you know, drop something down in it, and it thinks it'll fly, and that thing just go. Whew. Love watching that. But together with pathogens and parasitoids make up the wonderful world of biological control. Now, biological control, we're going to see probably more so in the greenhouse settings. You're going to see nursery people doing that. They can actually use these biologicals because they have a controlled environment. They're in an enclosed system. But predators, we've got mammals, arthropods, microorganisms, or even fungus. These are the free living general feeders. They may eat a single prey at a meal, or they may consume many individuals, as our ladybug, the lady beetle. And these are very, very beneficial in the greenhouse industry. But we couldn't go and release a bunch of ladybugs in our landscapes. Why? Why would we not want to spend the money ordering? Because there are companies you can order these beneficial insects from. But what's going to happen if we release these ladybugs into someone's landscape? What are they going to do?
They're going to take over.
Well, they're probably just going to fly away. There's some that would stay, but there's not going to be enough around to actually, you know, take care of the insect that they're designed to eat. They're used really, really, really well in the greenhouses because they can't fly off. And when you release a bunch of them, they're going to take off, and they're not going to be able to do the job that's expected of them to do.
Yeah.
But predatory insects in the larval stage must consume several prey to attain maturity. So predator adults lay their eggs near populations of prey where the hatching young have a good chance of obtaining food. They want to put it near it. Spiders are the exception. What do? Again, Mother Nature's #1 pest control. They create that web in places where the insects are going to fly into it. The spider might not even be around. And definitely the babies. But they're going to have that net. They're going to have that netting that they're going to go and actually catch it. You ever stepped on an adult female spider and all the babies come out? You squish her? Like they were still inside of her?
Yeah.
What happens if you
hundreds of them come out?
Yep. And what happens if you shine a spotlight or a flashlight on them? What's them little eyes do?
They just scatter about.
They scatter about, but it's creepy because all of those eyes are reflective. All predatory animals have that reflective eye when you shine a spotlight in them. It's like you have a million eyeballs looking at you.
Yeah.
Parasites, parasitoids, what is the difference and which is more effective? You have a parasite, kind of like ringworm and stuff that little kids get, and then you have a parasitoid. First of all, which one will kill the host?
Parasite.
Yeah, parasites will hurt it, and they'll set it back a little bit, but the parasitoid is going to kill it. That is the main difference, is the parasitoid kills it. So which then is more effective?
Okay, so that kills it.
Yep. Parasite will make you sick and not feel good and will set you back a notch, but the parasitoid will kill you. And people grow these parasitoids on purpose to actually sell them to people that are implementing an integrated pest management plan. Example of the parasite is the pinworm. And the parasites cannot regulate a pest population, but they can, debilitate it, set it back a notch. Parasitoids are the unsung heroes of naturally occurring insect control. They're too small to notice. We got to have them a microscope. They have no common names, and their scientific names are way too long and too difficult. And that's why we just don't know about them. They're members of the insect order of wasps and bees because they are a part of that. They're host specific. They are restricted in the number of species that they will attack. And so what's happening here? We have an aphid. We got the aphid right here. We've got the parasitoid right here. And like I said, we don't know the common names, and their scientific names are way too long. But what do you think this guy is doing right here?
Looks like he's killing it.
He is killing it, but not right at that second.
Is it like a stinger down there?
Well, it is like a stinger, but what do you think? What do you think she's unloading inside of that aphid?
Oh, the venom?
No.
No?
Her eggs.
Her eggs. Her eggs. She's laying her eggs inside that aphid. And so what does that aphid provide for those new little babies?
A host.
It is a host, but it's providing a warm shelter, habitat for them. And when they hatch, what is readily available for them?
Food.
They eat the aphid from the inside out. And so you can see aphids on a plant, but if you grab an aphid and you stick it underneath a microscope and you see that black hole on the side of it, that's where the eggs have hatched and they've ate their way out and they've created that hole to fly out of. So Mother Nature, she is a beast, right? Can you imagine being eaten from the inside out, all your organs and stuff? Not a peaceful way to go. But these parasitoids are very, very beneficial in greenhouse situations, and they can get rid of the aphids very, very quickly. So how natural controls work? They work all the time. Then why do some pest populations grow so large that they become a problem? We mess it up. So let's talk about these two examples. Now, most everybody's got their house plants outside right now. We do. We moved everything outside at the house. My wife is like a big tropical plant person. I'm starting to love them too just because of her. They're like her babies. I see her talking to them. I see her feeding them, watering them, spending time with them. But what happens when we pull these house plants inside in the winter? They get all kinds of disease. They get all kinds of insects on them. They're just kind of attracted to them. Why is that happening? But as soon as the spring gets here and we set those plants outside for the first couple of days, all of a sudden they just look beautiful. What were the plants exposed to outside that they were not exposed to on the inside?
UV rays.
That's part of it because that's climate. Their climate changed.
Yeah.
But they were not exposed to all the natural pest controls. The other insects that eat the insects that are on the inside. Little microscopic stuff that we don't really see with the bare eye. But most of the time, indoor plants start looking bad over the winter. Set them outside for 2 days in the spring, boom, we get that first pretty spell of weather, cleans them right up. Now, with the California oak moth, this was a situation where in California, people's oak trees were becoming defoliated, like losing all of their leaves. And the reason being was because of an oak moth. They would fly in and defoliate the oak trees, clean them. Well, what's everybody's first response to something like this? What do you think they want to do?
Kill them.
They want to kill them. They want to pull the pesticide truck up with the big hose tank and spray them down. And if they didn't want to do that, what did they want to do to the tree? Get the chainsaws out. Chop them up. Use them as firewood. But it took 2 ag agents really investigating this situation and determining that this was actually beneficial for the oak trees. And how in the world do you think defoliation would have been beneficial to these oak trees? Because these oak moths only came during the dry season. And when the plants get defoliated in the dry season, what are they not losing on a daily basis?
Water.
The water. They're maintaining the water that they had. Now, these moths, when they're sitting there munching on these leaves, I mean, they ate them up. When they're sitting there on the trees eating all these leaves, what are they doing in the meantime when they're eating? What's most animals do as soon as they eat?
Poop.
They poop. They're dropping their droppings at the base of the tree. And when the rains returned, what did the oaks have readily available for them? It was a natural fertilizer. So this was a natural phenomena that was happening that was very beneficial because these oak trees were kind of going through some stress period. They got defoliated. They got fertilized. The rain come back. They look more beautiful than they did before the oak moth defoliated them. But people's perception is we need to spray a pesticide. We need to spray a pesticide, or we need to cut the tree down. This was Mother Nature stepping in and doing the right thing for these trees. And so we need to learn more about these fluctuations that are part of a natural cycle of events in their ecosystems. We have to adjust our aesthetic opinions and reactions accordingly. Again, people's perception of it. People think that Mother Nature is just messy. They think the cobwebs and the spider webs are just horrible. They don't like seeing a snake. But what does a black snake do for us?
Oh, it kills rodents.
It kills rodents, and what else does it kill? Poisonous snakes.
Yeah.
I've actually seen a black snake kill a copperhead and eat it.
Good deal.
And you don't want that copperhead around. You don't want your kids or grandkids outside playing and they stumble across a copperhead. You don't want them to stumble across a black snake either. But that black snake, he don't want nothing to do with us. He wants to just be hidden. But for goodness gracious, don't kill him because he's getting rid of the bad things as well. Another thing that we see on a daily basis that helps us with ticks. What's the number one predator for ticks?
Oh, shoot. I know that one.
We see them at night, driving on the road. About the only time we will see them.
Possums.
Possums, exactly. And one possum can eat up to 5,000 ticks in one summer. One summer, 5,000 ticks. Best natural pest control we can have for those guys. And you know what? They don't carry rabies. They don't get sick. These animals are actually great to have in our yard. But people want to kill them. They see them on the road, and they run off the road trying to kill them. Don't do it. But most of our serious pest problems arise through accidental and occasionally deliberate but misguided introductions of exotic species. They were brought here. The cockroach, the gypsy moth, the Japanese beetle, the Mediterranean fruit fly, Dutch elm disease, chestnut blight, dandelions, kudzu.
Kudzu.
Yes.
They coming up here now.
Yeah. And who brought kudzu over?
I have no idea.
The railroad. They used it for erosion control. And it's taken over. We need to breed plants. When we breed plants, we don't need to do it. When we breed plants to satisfy human desires, we sometimes destroy the traits that discourage insects, both the hybrid roses and London plane tree. They get infected. They get just infested with the insects. And these hybrid roses that we buy, they're not as strong as grandma's roses that she had in her rose garden. No way. Not going to last it. We'll skip that. But we must thoroughly investigate how we can maintain the natural controls when altering plants or combining plant materials from different environments. Now, as a landscape contractor, installation guy, I see this all the time. I see designers and architects designing landscapes with plants that do not need to be together. And it's just from not knowing your plant material. You don't plant something that needs a ton of water in the same shrub bed as something that needs very little water. But we see it all the time. And we see introductions. They see a plant when they go to a plant show and they want to bring it here. It's not in this, it's just a totally different zone. But it happens all the time. And you see it a lot with homeowners bringing stuff. Or they go visit their grandma in a totally different state. She gives them a plant, or they take cuttings and they bring it home. And next thing you know, it's in their yard. And they're mad at you because it's dying. Everything gets blamed on the landscaper. And that comes from the Gardener's Guide to Common Sense Pest Control. And so, this isn't the conclusion of the 2 hours. We still got 1 more hour to go. But if you guys want to go ahead and take a 10-minute break real quick, I'll go ahead and open up the next slide deck, and we'll get together here in just 1 second. All right, let me go ahead. All right, can everybody see the screen, integrated pest management for the landscape manager? Good deal. Cool deal. All right. Some cool stuff here. We're at 8:13. We'll go ahead and jump in. All right. All right. What is a pest? It's any destructive or troublesome insect, animal, weed, microorganism, or pathogen. It's all of these things rolled up into one. But like I said, sometimes it may be a pest and others it may not be. One being the Bermuda grass. If we're athletes or we're golfers, we love Bermuda grass. If we're in the tall fescue zone, we don't want to see any Bermuda grass. It is considered a pest at that time. But again, pests make us a lot of money in the lawn care industry. There are 4 major types of pests that we deal with. We deal with weeds. We deal with disease agents or the pathogens. We deal with our invertebrates, the little bugs that I love so much. This is a whole nother world of biology with the exoskeletons and everything. These guys are just something else when it comes to reproducing and continuing their species. And then we have the vertebrates, which we don't deal with them too much in the lawn care industry. That's probably going to be more of a structural pest control company that's going to handle that stuff. But even with this right here, this cute little guy in the bottom right-hand corner, you know, I can think of times when he's not considered a pest. When is that?
When you keep them for a pet.
Exactly. My little girls, when they were tiny, when they were babies, they had one. They still got like a gerbil named Dwight. They named him Dwight off of The Office. But a little gerbil looking thing. You know what? And they get him out and they play with him and everything else, and the dogs freak out and want to kill it. But if they were to see something that looks just like him run across the bedroom floor, what are they going to do? They're going to jump on their bed and scream, "Oh, Dad, get it, kill it." It looks very similar to the one they keep in their big glass tank. But vertebrate biology is a cool source of biology, seeing how these guys, from the beginning of time, progressed through their biological cycles or how they almost kind of evolved. It was kind of a controversial class that I took at Clemson called vertebrate biology, and it was talking about the evolution of animals with the backbone and how they actually progressed through time. But my favorite is these little buggies. But pest differences, there's continuous, sporadic, and potential. Continuous is nearly always present and require regular control. Hey, one of the biggest things that we have to do every spring is what? We have to put out our pre-emergent. It's continuous. Crabgrass is just going to be there. Sporadic is a migratory, or silical, or other occasional pest that requires control once in a while. It may be some other type of weed. It could be Johnson grass, or it could be the sedges that we have. It could be a certain type of weed that may or may not happen. And then potential, not pests under normal conditions, but require control under certain circumstances. Hey, our Bermuda grass, perfect example of that. The pesticide, it's any substance that is used to kill a pest or prevent or reduce the damage that it may cause. Now, the stuff that we're seeing here can be bought in the big box stores. So it's not stuff that we're going to use. We're going to buy the concentrate. But has anybody ever been to Site One, Green Resource or whatever, and seen a homeowner and they're trying to buy a restricted use pesticide? Nobody ever seen that? I've seen it. What does that homeowner have to buy a restricted use pesticide? License, exactly. And our dealers check that. If you buy a restricted use pesticide, you're going to have to present them with a license number, or they're going to have it on file. They're going to know that they're selling it to a licensed applicator. But I've seen homeowners try to buy it. They've got that thing called Google, and they become an expert, and they try to do some of this stuff ourselves. But the stuff they sell in the big box stores, not that damaging to Mother Nature. Pest management goals and terminology. Goals of pest management, for one, prevention. We want to keep problems from happening. Suppression, reduce the pest populations to an acceptable level. That's going to be different with each client that we have. We've got clients now that will not stand for one weed in their yard. They will fire us on the spot. We have other clients that, hey, they're okay with it. We're going to take care of it. But if one pops up, they're going to at least give us time to do it, or they're going to be like, look, man, I could care less. Just cut the grass and go. And then you do have those clients that all they want is mow, blow, and go. They don't care if they have a weedy yard. Eradication, eliminate the pest problem or the population. The bad thing, what's the bad thing about eradication, though? What happens if we totally eradicate a pest? What happens to that landscape? Our beneficials are going to leave. If we kill everything that we want to kill, the good stuff are going to leave too because they don't have nothing to eat. So you almost want to leave a little area where you don't treat, so you keep those beneficial insects. Pesticide terms, guys, this is a review. This is right out of the core manual. Mode of action, how the pesticide works, selectivity, does it target one species or is it, a broad spectrum? Systemic, they enter the tissues of the pest, crop, or animal, are then transported within. Contact, they do not translocate. It's only on the surface. Residual activity is the effective lifetime of different pesticides that varies from hours to weeks, months, and years. And then pesticide resistance. Pest population is no longer controlled by a pesticide, usually due to elimination of susceptible individuals by repeated exposure. So we've got to change our pesticides up. We can't use the same one over and over again. And we definitely need to change our mode of action when we change our pesticides. Types of pesticides, again, review. We use herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, rodenticides, miticides. Sometimes maybe take care of the nematodes. Piscicide, we're not going to do that. That's going to be an aquatics individual. Repellents, we can sometimes use that. Defoliant, we've used them before. Desiccants, we use it at the school, in greenhouse and nursery class. Growth regulators, we use in the landscape in our business, especially when it comes time to pruning. Pheromones, used to actually trap them into some traps. Growth regulators. Any of you guys use that when you actually prune or actually use a growth regulator after you've cut turf grass, or use it around edging so you don't have to weed eat or edge as much around the shrub beds and sidewalks? Anybody have any experience with that or actually use it? I love using Atromac, especially on some hollies. You've got a large property that's full of hollies, and you can go in and prune them early spring. And when they hit that burst of new growth, right as soon as you see the new light colored foliage, spray it with some Atromac. You're not going to have to prune it again until, maybe late August or whatever, but it's just going to be shoots here and there. But what it does is it eliminates pruning that second time. And that saves on, employee hours actually out there pruning. And a lot of people use a growth, regulator on edging. If you're on a large property, or a large campus or whatever, and you have, a ton of sidewalks. I mean, I'm talking like miles. They'll actually weed eat it, do an edging on it the first time, and then spray a growth regulator or growth retardant for the turf grass. So what is IPM? I found two similar definitions, and they basically say the same thing, but IPM is the coordinated use of appropriated control tactics to reduce pests and their damage to an acceptable level. Again, that word acceptable level, it's going to be different for each of our clients. Most of them are going to want, to have a weed-free yard or fungicide-free yard. They want that. But each person's tolerance level is a little bit different. It also is the combination of appropriated pest control tactics into a single plan to reduce pests and their damage to an acceptable level. So basically, we're taking multiple things and putting it together in one plan. And the use of a pesticide should always be the last resort, except for weeds. I mean, we're not going to get rid of weeds unless we spray. But the IPM approach can be grouped into 6 major steps. Identify the pest and understand its biology. The number one reason we have pesticide failure is because we misidentify the pest. We don't know what it is. And a lot of the times we may think it's something, but we don't go back and check different times of the day. Why does the time of day have something to do with IPM? Because a lot of these pests result in the same damage to our turf or to our shrubs. We may think it's one insect, but it's totally something different. So we may have to monitor it different times of the day. And 2 is monitoring. 3 is determine if the threshold levels of pest populations have been reached. Again, that's going to be different for our clients. It's going to be different for you as a landscape manager. When is it that you have to step in and actually do something about the pest? Consider the various management choices that we have as 4, and then implement the tactic or tactics that control the pest with the least harm to everything else. Again, going back to being a steward of the land. And the one thing that we need to do that we probably don't do is we need to write this stuff down. We need to record it and evaluate our results. And what's the best tool that we keep in our back pocket all day for recording and evaluating results? This little guy right here, our phones, the perfect camera phone. Most of you guys are taking this class from your phone. We couldn't have done this a few years ago, but technology is changing. This is the best way to actually record our results. Overview of integrated pest management. Again, pest identification. We got to do that first. We got to monitor. We got to scout, find the pest, take samples. Action thresholds. We need to determine what pest population is likely to cause enough damage to justify the cost of control. Guys, sometimes it may be in our best interest to let the pest have the plant because the pesticide may be way too expensive. It just depends on what it is. But determine those thresholds. And then select the best management option. We have natural controls. We want that if at all possible. cultural control, crop or site management, sanitation, remove food, water, shelter, mechanical control, mowing, remove weeds by hand, exclusion, set screens, traps, and barriers, biological control, introduce predators or pathogens. We do that with, the milky spore. Host resistance, use plants that have, been designed for that. Quarantine and regulatory control, we're not doing that. The government does that when something takes hold. Usually after a hurricane or whatever, there's the only time, I had an ag inspector on here one night and they were talking about they had to do something with the cotton down on the East Coast after the hurricane. Chemical control, again, that's last. That's last in the list. But evaluate and record your results. For a pesticide application to make economic sense, or at least break even, we need to monitor the pest population to see if it's reached the economic threshold. That's when it's time to act. You can justify the cost, but you don't want it to reach the economic injury level. And you see over here, you have the number of pests as it rises over time. The pest population starts low, gets a little higher. When it reaches this threshold right here, it's time to treat. Time to treat. You can actually, it's justifiable in the budget. It's the time to do it and spend the money. If it reaches that economic injury level, you're not going to be able to correct the situation. The pests win. So again, what does it take to determine all of this? You've got to be monitoring. And to monitor it, it means you've got to be on site. And if it's not you and it's one of your employees, they're going to have to be trained on this and know what to look for. How many of you guys get all of your employees at least certified through the Department of Ag? Maybe not licensed, but definitely go through the 2-day pesticide school that the state offers. It's not a bad way to go. Have these guys certified underneath you, your license, because who's it going to fall back on if they make a mishap? You, the license holder. So on one of these winter days when the Department of Ag starts having these classes, it's good to get your employees certified. We've already talked about this, and 2 slides ago. Don't know why I've got it in there double, but the applied controls is what we're doing. Natural controls is the topic that we talked about in the first hour. With the biological, mechanical, cultural, physical, environmental modification, host resistance, all the way through chemical controls. And here's pesticide resistance. This is what happens. You're going to have one little individual who is not affected by the pesticide. And you know what? This is kind of crazy. Y'all remember, and this is, again, back to the COVID situation. Y'all remember the movie that Will Smith was in, I Am Legend? When there was a disease that overtook New York City and they quarantined the island, and it killed. It didn't kill everybody, but it made them into zombies, and he was not infected. Well, this is like Will. He's still alive. He's still functioning. All of these guys got infected and they're gone, or they're turned into zombies. Well, if Will was to find a mate and they have babies, they're going to be not susceptible to it. And eventually it would kind of wean itself out. But these right here are still living. We don't want that with our creatures, our little bugs out there. We want to get rid of them. So what do you think we need to do after this application? What do we need to do right in here? We've made this application. We've noticed that there's a few more. Before this happens, what should we do with our pesticides? Change our
chemicals.
Change the chemicals. Change the mode of action. Do whatever we can, because these guys are developing a resistance to it. So what is IPM? Let's look at the 3 words separately. Integrate, to combine 2 or more things to form or create something. We're taking a multitude of those whole list of items that we've got. Pest is the animal or insect that caused the problems for people, especially by damaging crops, and turf grass, and shrubs. And then management, the act or skill of controlling and making decisions. And that's the word I like using. I like using that word management all the way through the green industry. Landscape management, lawn management. We're managers. We're managing people's properties, and we have the skills and the knowledge to do this. And when we start talking to them, our customers, and using this word, integrated pest management, they want to listen. They want to listen because people are on Mother Nature's side. They don't want to use the pesticides if they don't have to. IPM, again, initially developed for ag. It provides a process for identifying the pest problems and is designed to determine whether the cost of a particular pest management action is worth the result. And especially in agriculture, farmers, they could spend a ton of money trying to get rid of the pest. And is it really going to protect their yield? Are they actually, if they spent the money on the pesticide application, is their return from their yield going to be stronger, or is it going to be the same? Or did they spend more money on the pesticide? They've got to make that determination. And that is set by the action threshold before it reaches the economic threshold. Treatments are not made according to a predetermined schedule. So what does that really affect in our industry? What is the one thing that we do on a predetermined schedule? Our lawn care applications. We do. We automatically go out and do our liming in January, the wintertime. Then we do our 2 pre-emergents, and then we come back with another treatment. Then we start getting ready for fall, the plugging and seeding. Everything is on a schedule. So you would think that it doesn't fit lawn care, but it can. It can. And the one thing I like telling people, is when I make an application to someone's property, I like pushing out my fertilizer and I like spraying my weed control. I don't like mixing the two all in one tank. I had a guy on here a couple weeks ago. He was talking about, I mix my pre-emergent, my fertilizer, and he was putting 3 in there. So he's putting a broadleaf herbicide, a pre-emergent, and a fertilizer. Now, what do you think's happening there? Yes, he's saving money by making one walk over the property. And when he's putting out the liquid fertilizer and a pre-emergent, that's probably, okay to do. But if he doesn't have weeds in the yard and he's putting out a post-emergent herbicide, what do you think's happening? For one, he's wasting money. That chemical costs money. And second, he's putting a pesticide out where it's not needed. And that's what? It's illegal. Don't apply a pesticide where it's not needed. Some of this stuff, I know some of the stuff we spray isn't that expensive, but a lot of the stuff that we can purchase is. I don't like mixing it. I can walk it a whole lot faster. Now, maybe our employees, not so much, but that's, a whole different story. Nobody's going to work as hard as the business owner. They never will. But when it comes to walking the turf, I like pushing my fertilizer, my feeding, and I like spraying my weeds. And guys, I keep a backpack sprayer on the truck. I don't want to pull the hose off a truck if I don't have to. If I've got a small few weeds in the back, I'll grab the backpack and knock it out real quick instead of dragging the hose. I'm only applying the pesticide where it's needed. Unacceptable conditions for our customers is economic damage. It's going to kill the turf. Medical damage, we're not going to see that. We're not going to get anything from turf grass or anything that's going to pass to the humans or their dogs. Aesthetic damage is the presence of a plant or animal that causes undesirable change in appearance. Yes. Brown patch will make it look nasty. The grubs will kill it. We're going to have all that, the brown dead stuff. We got to get rid of it. A nuisance problem, an annoying coexistence, mosquitoes, the gnats that are out there, the crane flies that were in the spring. Economic damage easily assessed in agriculture, forestry, and other related settings, but in the home, especially for the structural guys, is termites. That happens. People lose their homes all the time because of that. Garden vegetables being lost. We lose our clothes because of moths. And then Dutch elm disease. And here we actually have the termite damage. And then we have here some vegetable gardens. This right here does not bother me. Would y'all eat this? Would y'all cook it up?
Oh, that's collard.
But what does this tell me? All these little holes and stuff, what does it tell me as a consumer of a crop?
Yeah, we got pest problem.
Yeah, we have a pest problem, but you know what? That's easily washed off. If that was in my garden, I'm still going to eat it. But if I was to go somewhere else, like to a farmer's market or whatever, or, my neighbor brought this over to me, all these holes in the insects on it tells me that what has not been applied to it? Pesticide.
That hasn't been done.
They haven't sprayed it. And some people, that means a lot to them, knowing that it's not being used with pesticide. Now, with strawberries, we grow 2.5 acres of strawberries every year. We have a strawberry farm. And this past year, we had the best season ever, even with the COVID restrictions. That was the one thing that people could still come out and do. But what's everybody's question to us with the strawberries? Other than, are they organic? Which, no. We're not doing the organic thing. It just costs way too much money to get them certified. Yes, we take the necessary steps to make them organic, but I hate that word to begin with. We tell them that they are environmentally friendly grown, but people always ask us, have you applied a pesticide to your strawberries? And what do you think our answer always is?
Yes.
No. We actually, now we do a pre-emergent, we do a fungicide treatment, when we put down the plastic, we fumigate the soil for fungus and weed control. But once the berries go into the ground, it's hand pulling weeds. It takes forever. It takes forever for all of us to go down there and pull the weeds around the plants. But we do it. We do it because we do not want to spray anything over top of them. Medical damage. This is, bubonic plague, Lyme disease, talking about the possum eating all the ticks. That's why we want it. Malaria. I still can't believe, that people still die from malaria when we have the cure for this and the preventative treatments that we got in the Army. Histoplasmosis, an internal fungus infection that people get from working in chicken houses. Toxoplasmosis. This is an affliction of the central nervous system. This happens when expecting mothers, handle kitty litter boxes or they touch contaminated meat. The bubonic plague, crazy stuff. The rat carries the plague, flea drinks the blood, multiplies in its stomach, bites the human, and people died. Millions died with this. Lyme disease, again, keep the possums around. Malaria, mosquitoes, happening everywhere, especially in the third world countries. Here's the histoplasmosis, the chicken fungus. And then here's an expectant mother, getting sick from it. And it's actually the fetus. Aesthetic damage. What constitutes an undesirable change is highly personal. People think nature is messy. They don't understand it. And even ornamental plants are susceptible to attitudes. We used to take care of a large Methodist home here in Winston-Salem. It was about 88 acres. And we had 50 acres in grass. And the rest of it was, homes and streets and everything. But they had a lot of open mow areas. But they got a new executive administrator over the site one year. And this guy hated the Nandinas that were planted on campus. And so he found money for us to dig up every Nandina and replace them with other plants just because he hated Nandinas. Now, that's a waste of money, in my opinion, but, we got paid for it. But again, people's attitudes, they just didn't like it. Appearance of the pest itself. People are going to freak out when they see the spider. They freak out when they see the box elder bug, especially when they see it in droves like this. But that's not a problem. They're not damaging the tree. They're just hanging out. We actually have a lantern tree on campus that we'll see a lot of this going on. And people are like, cut the tree down, spray it. And we're like, no, they're just hanging out. They're only there for a few days and they're gone. This is a problem. This is an aesthetic damage. People freak out. They're scared of it, but it's also damaging. What's the best way to get rid of this? Fire pit. Cut it out. Remove it. Don't spray it. Just cut it out. Aphids. Look at this. Mama's having the babies. Little live birth. But you know what? She don't need the man to make it in her life. She can reproduce for the next generation without him. Fear of future damage causes concern. Relief of fear comes from learning about the pest biology and ecology. Same thing with snakes. I don't like a snake. I'm not going to kill it. I will pick one up, if I have to remove it out of a situation. But I'm probably going to go grab, at least a rake or something to pick it up. Laura, she will go and pick any snake up. I'm like, sweetie, you got to be a little careful about that because you don't know if they've interbred or whatever, but she is. She'll pick them up, play with them. But she freaks out when I start playing with the insects that we find. It's crazy how people's, mentality over stuff scares them and other things won't. Sometimes the damage can be the product of the animal's activity. The problem can be solved by cleaning away the evidence, but leaving the animal alone. Again, some people find that very disturbing. I actually think that's what? Beautiful. I love seeing that, especially over a light, especially over in the garden, because I know that spider is getting rid of those insects that's damaging my plants. The spider's not eating my fruits and vegetables. He's eating the bugs that are eating the fruits and vegetables. More aesthetic damage. Look at the honeydew falling down. This not only aesthetic damage, looking ugly, but what if we had a jogger running in front of our house and they slip on this, or somebody parks their car on it and gets that? We could be held liable for that. The fear of insects can make an aesthetic damage a medical one, which is called entomophobia, just like arachnophobia, the movie years ago. This fear can be overcame. Just study the plants. Like I said, the one way that I've kind of grown away from the fear of the snakes is by actually studying them. I follow a page on Instagram, and that's all it's about is the different snakes of the world and learning about their life cycles and stuff. Again, they don't want nothing to do with us. We just kind of got to leave them alone. But nuisance problems, fungus gnats just flying around us when we're outside, sparrows, squirrels, invasive plants. What's the number one pest control for squirrels other than a shotgun? A Labrador retriever.
Oh. Yeah.
I swear, I got 3 huge oak trees at the house and not a squirrel in sight because of Lucky, or she's no longer here, but now we got Shiloh. There are no squirrels around this house whatsoever. Pest or guest. Again, no animal in itself is a pest. The way each of us feels about the visitor determines whether it's welcomed or not, whether it's a pet or pest. Again, we don't want to see neither one of this stuff. But you know what? Every now and then we got a kid that's got one in an empty fish tank. But this little guy looks kind of cute. I don't care what you say. Tom and Jerry. All right. In 1970, the National Park Service was called in by some rich golf course residents that kept getting bit by mosquitoes. Well. Just because they're playing golf and they get bit, they actually called a Park Service. However, what did they know is that local farmers and some lower income residents fish to supplement their diet. Downstream, this was on a river. Well, they introduced BT, which killed the mosquito larvae. So what do you think happened to the farmers and the low income residents? They were fishing to eat. The fish ate the mosquito larvae. When all the larvae was killed, where did the fish go? Downstream. They weren't there. And so people went hungry. Again, this stuff needs to be studied, just like with the Modesto aster, the California oak moth. It is the human social context in which the organisms exist that determines whether the population is pestiferous. It is almost always the size of the population, not merely the presence of an individual organism, that matters to humans. Is the damage tolerable? A few fleas on the family dog, it's going to happen even if you're treating the dog or he's wearing a flea collar, he's going to get it. But it's a big problem when we have fleas in the carpet. Cockroach in the cabinet. Remember, we talked about that in the first hour. Or when we see that cockroach crawling on the floor. Total eradication is virtually impossible. It's actually undesirable. It kills the natural pest enemies, and it upsets the broader ecological balance. However, is warranted with newly invading species. There's a bunch of carp, that's getting in the rivers and stuff people are having to get rid of. Other weeds, other plants that are spreading around. You want to get rid of it. But your toleration without harm to your health or plants of the presence of a pest or pest-related damage. It's a 3-step process to determine the injury level. How much aesthetic, medical, or economic damage can be tolerated. Find out how large the pest population can grow that causes the level of damage, and then treatment level to keep the pest population small enough not to cause damage. Here I am with our old cat who eventually just disappeared. I love this cat to death. It was the first time I ever got attached to a cat. But we declawed him. We found him. He was on the side of the road, so the girls saw him and just had to have him. He was an indoor cat. We declawed him, and the girl's mom was ready to get rid of him. And I'm like, don't do that. If you take him to the pound, he's going to be euthanized. I was like, just let him outside. Let him be outside. No. He don't have front claws. Let me tell you something. This dude could defend himself against any dog. But I would every day come home from work, and I'd sit on the patio, and I would comb him, and I would check to see that he had any fleas. We were treating him and everything, but I was using the comb as a trap to see if there was any on him because we'd still let him come in and out. I always check to see, is the population rising or is it falling or is he clean? What I was doing was monitoring. I was monitoring him to see how many fleas he had. I was good at noticing these things, and you have to do that with your other plants, your other properties. You have to see what's going on and how it affects other plants, other organisms. And you'll notice whether it's a pest or if it's a desirable. But with that, with me combing the cat, I was able to determine whether or not he could come inside every so often. And we know that fleas tend to be a bigger problem during certain times of the year. When we are monitoring, I'm not going to go over all these in detail, but mainly hearsay, casual looking, we're not writing it down. Casual looking, we're writing it down. And then careful inspection with written observation. And then 5 written observation and quantitative descriptions. We're going to start with 3 in the lawn care and maybe go through 5. We're not going to mess with 1 or 2, and definitely 6 or 7. That's mainly used in greenhouse or nursery settings. Match the monitoring effort to the importance of the problem. Like I said, home and garden, 3, 4, and 5. We'll start at level 3 and progress to level 5 until the problems become serious. If you think they will become serious. Level 6, again, for greenhouses. You don't have to count numbers. They can be small, medium, large. Importantly, you must assess the situation at regular intervals and make record of what you see. They can be informal. What do you think the most valuable monitoring tool that you have is? It's what's on either side of your nose, your eyeballs. You got to be on site and look at this stuff. And what do you think this individual's doing here at night? He's visiting the property at night. And like I said, you have to visit it multiple times a day because we may think it's a daytime pest when in all actuality, it's a pest that only comes out at night. We've got to monitor the difference in hours of activity. And it doesn't necessarily have to be you. It could be, hey, ask your client, say, look, hey, if you don't mind, I probably need to come by at 10 o'clock at night, or you can step outside and I want you to look for something. Tell me what you see. Take a picture of it and send it to me. But the difference in hours of activity is one of the most causes of misidentified pest, which in all actuality is the number one reason we have a pesticide failure. Toolkit to keep in the truck, especially if you're the ones doing it. You know, but we got some, we got an aspirator, some sticky traps, pheromone traps, plastic vials, Ziploc bags, a hand trowel, flashlight, a notepad, and some pruning shears. You can take samples of the insects, take samples of the plant damage, and just kind of keep that with it. What to look for. To know where to look for the pest, you must know something about its biology. But to find out more about the biology and ecology, you must know what the pest is. So, which comes first? It depends on what you know. If all you see is the pest damage and not the pest, try to answer these questions. What is the evidence of damage? Is there presence of natural enemies? There's going to be some animals that you're just going to see with other pests. Is it something that we've done or that your client's done? Are there any potentially contributing activities? And what's the weather and microclimate been? In timing treatment activities, you often need to consider the life cycles and seasonal variations of both the pest and its natural enemies. With the flea example earlier, we know that the fleas tend to be a problem certain times of the year. Generation time may be shorter or longer than the seasons, and this has a bearing on the treatment schedule. Bagworms before the bags, we've seen a ton of them this year. Beetles treated while grubs in the lawn, that's when we want to hit them. And then mosquito larvae in the water source. Correct timing is even more crucial in the application of the many newer, less toxic commercial pesticides such as microbial controls and insect hormones. We need to hit it at the correct life cycle of the pest. Treatment should only be applied where the problem is most severe and have the greatest impact. For example, the fleas are in the bedding and the house, not just the pet, so tactics focusing on the animal are less effective in the long run. We're going to have to fumigate the house as well. Spot treatment, you need to leave a small local untreated residue of pests to feed the beneficials. If not, they're going to pack up and leave. And then treating only the critical areas is known as a spot treatment. That's why I love a backpack sprayer, guys. Love it. And that comes from O&T and our core manual and the pest control guide. So, and guys, we finished this up 3 minutes over, but that's okay. Any questions, concerns, comments? How bad was it? Was it a quick 2 hours?
Quick 2 hours.
Well, good. That's what I like hearing.
Very informative. We enjoyed it.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So I appreciate it. Anything else? Comments, questions, concerns?
Hey, keep me posted when you're going to bring back some more of these here webinars so that I can get in on some more.
Yeah, we do them every Tuesday night. Every Tuesday night. And so you can just check our website, turfteacher.com, and then click on live webinars tab, and we do them every Tuesday. Some Tuesdays are different. Like it's weird how the Department of Ag will approve some of the classes. They'll give us, more categories approval for some and not the others. I know last week we did have right away in aquatics, and so we had, a lot of people needing that. From what I understand, aquatics is hard to find. I don't know. So it's one of those things. We try to focus on the ornamentals and turf, but they'll approve some for right away in aquatics. And so, but yeah, I send out emails. I send out usually an email, Monday evening or Tuesday morning, sometimes both, to let you guys know that we're having another one. But we do them every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. So.
Okay. Fantastic.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. And guys, check out Turf's Up Radio. I do a radio show every morning, 7 to 8, and then I do one every Monday night, 6 to 8. And we talk about stuff like this all the time. Matt Martin with the Grass Factor, who owns Carbon Earth. We sell his fertilized products. Great guy. He comes on like 4 to 6 every weekday afternoon. And the dude, man, is just super smart with turf grass management. So we got an app, Turf's Up Radio. You can download it, or you can ask Alexa to launch it, or you can stream it from your computer. But it's dedicated to the green industry, especially the lawn care and turf grass side. So we have fun. We have fun doing that. So, but free to listen to it, and you get a lot of good information, especially from Matt. Every single day, he's on 4 to 6, and I'm on in the mornings. So I used to do a 2-hour morning show, but it's kind of getting in the way of work and everything. So I cut it back to an hour. But then we do one every Monday night. We talk more on Monday night about the business side, kind of contract specifications, stuff like that. So,
What'd you say his last name was?
Matt Martin.
Matt Martin. Thank you.
Matt Martin, yeah, the Grass Factor. He's got a huge YouTube page. So, but he's a UT graduate, Tennessee, turf grass management, and they started Carbon Earth. They do the chicken litter fertilizing stuff. So it's all like organic stuff. I mean, not truly organic, because he hates that word organic too, but they're taking the chicken litter and actually making the fertilizer from it. So good system they've got in place. So well, if not any questions, it's time to go get some dinner.
I heard that.
9:00. All right, guys. Well, cool deal. I appreciate it. And y'all let me know if you need anything.
All right. Have a good
Have a
one.
good night, man.
See you guys.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.